Hello everyone, I'm here with T.K Cassidy, a writer based in Alabama, an author of several titles, including her latest work, Who'da Thunket. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Enjoying the last of the kind of warmer weather that we're getting on this year. But yeah, I suppose let's start right, but let's go right back to the beginning. What inspired you to become an author?
Well, Mother tells me she found me reading whatever reading was at 3 years old in the covers. And when somebody put that little yellow stick in my fingers and showed me that that stick could make marks on the paper and those marks meant something, and if you put marks together to make letters, they made words and they made sentences and they made stories. Katie bar the door. I was gone. I was keeping records and notes and little stories by the time I was 7. And just I can't not write. That's just all there is to it. I need to do that like you need to breathe. So, does that answer your question?
It absolutely does, and it's a feeling I can 100% relate to. I think as
Yeah.
writers, as any creative really, but it's like an inbuilt thing
Yeah.
that you just can't
Hmm.
help but do. And yeah, I think I spoke to a few other authors, and they all say the same thing. It started when they were so young.
Yeah.
It's kind of you come out the womb with almost with a pen in hand, which I love. Um,
Mother would love that.
And I suppose on the flip side of that, every other creative I've spoken to as well has experienced some form of imposter syndrome. Now, have you experienced it, and what does that look like for you?
No, I can't. I honestly can say I haven't done it much. Maybe once or twice, a little bit. More, I fear success. If I write something really good, they're going to expect more out of me. And can I do that? And that drives me to write more because I don't want to let people down. So, yeah, sometimes I do feel like a little bit like I shouldn't be here, but for the most part, I've worked hard. I think I deserve what attention I get for it.
I'm glad to hear that because most people I have spoke to say like 100% I have experienced imposter syndrome, this feeling that I don't belong here, but you seem to be quite confident and quite assured about, for the most part anyway, that you know, and that's a good thing that you have this talent and this
Thank
gift
you.
to give. And that, that's nice to hear. And on that note, being an author requires you to tap into some deeper essence of who you are. And I always think it's this kind of flow state that's quite meditative. Have you had any discoveries that have kind of popped out of that state?
Oh yeah. My husband's always nudging me saying, "Are you with me? Are you in that place?" Because I've just drifted off to somewhere. I have, I think we have like two brains. The one that sits here, talks to you, is logical, sees the world. And then we have the lizard brain that's always thinking, just laying back there thinking. So when I get into a place where I can't think of what to write or anything, I get out a coloring app off from the on my iPad and I start coloring away, and that little lizard brain just goes to town. And Lord knows what it'll come up with. I mean, the newest book that I'm writing is so off the wall that from what I'm known for, that I'll probably have to write it under a pseudonym if I publish it all. It's about a serial killer, and I write about funny old people. So,
Definitely a
but
change in genre. So
yeah, the
what
lizard brain
inspired
wakes me
you?
up at night and says, "You will write this. Get up now." And so I go do it. So
I get that. I get that. And what, I mean, apart from the lizard brain, was there anything else that kind of prompted you to go in that direction?
no, I spent a lot of time when I was younger studying for different religions because I've traveled quite a bit to Australia and Guam and all around the United States. And meditation just happens, it's a state I can drop into whenever I need to. And that frees up that cluttered front mind to let your lizard brain go. Got to do that. Just stop thinking and write. Sounds counterproductive, but it's true.
Oh, completely. And I've been watching quite a lot of Rick Rubin interviews lately,
Mhm.
and he speaks to that. He's known for his practices in the morning of kind of getting up and meditating and journaling and doing all these things that allows him to drop into this state that is now quite natural for him because he's been doing it for years. But
Sure.
for many of us who are so accustomed to that busy life and we don't have, we allow the clutter to kind of gather. I think, I mean, would you say that that is a tool that we should be utilizing as creatives to
Oh
empty?
yes, oh yes. The
Yeah.
more you can get in touch with your real self, the real person that's in there, and give those that to your writing, the more the believable your characters are, the more believable your settings they are, and the more of a flow goes to your story. If that makes sense. You're not getting so choppy and you're flowing to where you want your reader to go, and they enjoy reading a lot more. At least I do. But if the story doesn't make me stop anywhere and think, what? Then it's a good story in my case, in my feelings.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And again, just going back to because you said something there about like this flow state and kind of dropping into it, and Rick Rubin talks about how it's almost when we create whatever it is that we're kind of born to create, whether you're a writer, a painter, a gardener, even, it's almost like this divine offering. I don't consider
Exactly.
myself religious, but it comes from this other place.
Hmm.
I don't even
It's
think.
impossible to explain to someone who doesn't have it.
Yeah.
But if you have it, you go. And you can't help but go there. Have to
You
go.
can't help but go there, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and perhaps that answers the next question, but do you have a particular setup for writing? Any rituals that you find yourself doing?
Now I have an office, but often I find myself, we live on the banks of a river, and it's a beautiful river, and I have a big 5 foot square picture window that looks right out at in my living room. So I often take my computer and go out and sit there in the living room and watch the river flow and the animals. We have hummingbirds and badgers and groundhogs and raccoons, a family of raccoons that come every morning and knock on the window for food. And so sitting there staring at them again connects that busy brain and lets the lizard brain go. But that's as soon if I can't write, if I can't think of anything worth to write, I'll sit down and I'll start making a grocery list. I'll talk about what's going to happen at the grocery store. And then all of a sudden I'm writing a story. So, you just have to turn yourself loose and let it go. No matter how you start, just turn it loose.
And that quite nicely leads into the next question about inspiration and how it can come from anywhere. Where is the strangest place you've had an idea, writing or otherwise?
Well, it's not only a strange place, but a strange idea. Do you know the television series Dexter? Have you heard of that? I love Dexter. The world comes to a grinding halt whenever he's on television. And I like the fact that he's so lovable and yet so horrible at the same time. So yesterday we were watching a rerun, and I thought about all of a sudden into my mind pops, what about if we have a Dexter type person who's now in his 80s and he's in a nursing home and he's not well, half blind, can't have hardly hear, but he still thinks he can be a serial killer. But he's not going to be very effective. So it should turn out very humorous. So wherever you're sitting there, whatever is going on, something's going to nudge you and pay attention to it. Just pay attention.
Uh, um, I know that after watching Dexter, I was either beside myself with laughter or
Yes.
slightly on edge at the fact that like I loved him so much. But I think that,
Yes.
on the topic of writing, you know, whoever wrote his character must have had such a skill because they blended two complete, like diametrically opposed kinds of
Exactly.
people and blended
I
them.
read Darkly Dreaming Dexter, the first book, years ago, and I met the author. He was a friend of a friend of mine, and he's like that. He's got that kind of glint in his eye when he tells you things that like I'm messing with you here, but maybe I'm not. So he just turned it loose, and I'm impressed that he came up with such a great idea.
Oh, I love it. It was definitely it's in my top three.
They're bringing him back.
Art.
They're
Oh,
doing
well,
a new.
that's.
I
Oh,
know. Yeah,
I'm glad to
can't
hear
wait.
it.
Sorry, a sidetrack there.
No, no, I'm glad to hear it. But yeah, I suppose kind of on that note of writing and inspiration and kind of funny stories. Let's talk about your recent title, Who'da Thunk It, which I can see just behind you here.
It's Whoodah, Thunket and the Girls, and it's about three elderly sisters who, well, their dad, they find out they have a big debt that their father left them. And the only way they can make that much money in a short period of time is to turn back to what their father taught them when they were children, which is cat burglary. Whoodah, Thunket, 70-year-old cat burglars. So in the first book, they have these adventures and they meet three guys along the way. And in the second book, which wasn't intended, but came from talking to a book group that I addressed, they started spitballing ideas and it came out like 5 months later. And they married those three guys, three wildly different weddings on one weekend. And I have to say, the one lady wanted to be on horseback and the horse took off on her, which was fun to write because that happened to me on my first wedding. We do stupid things like that in Montana. So I know it was fun to remember that and to write it out. And last one, they get a big old tour bus and they decide to go off on a bucket list honeymoon, calling themselves the Grandcestors and going off whitewater rafting and skydiving and all that good stuff. And believe it or not, I turned 72 in just a couple of weeks, and I'm going skydiving probably next spring. So people in their 70s do whitewater rafting and those kind of silly things.
I was gonna say, I think you're definitely a braver woman than I am because I
Oh,
don't,
somebody will have to push me. Trust me, they'll have to push me out of the plane, but I'm gonna if you I found out when I was a child, if you roll your eyes way up in the back of your head and listen for a long time, you can get that feeling of falling and you can make it longer and stronger. And I really loved that feeling when I was a kid. And I'm kind of hoping that's what falling out of a plane will feel like.
let's hope so. Let's hope so. I
Okay.
I know that
Better ye than me, huh?
well, exactly. I know that when I'm lying in bed and sometimes you get that half asleep way and it
Yes,
fall, I know that that scares me. So I
I love that
don't
feeling.
know. I don't know if I could do it.
Odd people.
It's funny what we're drawn to though. I think
Mhm.
that's, if I have friends who are complete polar opposites of me, but it's funny to see what gets people going. Um,
True.
but yeah, I'll maybe touch base with you in a couple of weeks and see if you're still alive.
Excellent. Well, I can't do it till spring. That's when the best weather is. So
You go
give
all
me a
wrong.
few minutes. And I have to lose another 20 pounds. I dropped 75 and I want to lose another 20 before I do it because the weight helps. It's different when you're up there in the plane.
I
So.
see. I see. Yeah, I still won't be doing it. No money could convince me. Um,
Okay.
but I mean, what was you've published, a few books now, and what was your
Yes.
experience of that first time that you got published?
Um, my actual feeling, I self-published. I did them all. I laid them out. I got them all put together and formatted them and put them through a program and then put them on Amazon. And somebody in my writing group when I moved here to this town put their fingers all over my back and almost forced me to turn the Who to Thunk It into a paperback. I never wanted to do that because I'm retired now and I kind of thought I'd just sit back here and write my stories and didn't figure out how they were going to get out to the public. So I ended up going ahead and printing it. And the first time I saw that box of books, I honestly opened it up and said, well, finally, because I thought I was going to be the next Hemingway by 35. And that's half an age ago, half a life ago. So finally, I got a book in print. Hurrah. And people really seem to like it. I'm selling them pretty well.
I was kind of reading the blurb, just had a look on your website, and it's a very unique storyline. It's never something I've really come across before. Um,
True.
and I really enjoy that sort of blending almost of genres.
Thank you. Thank
Um,
you. People write old people off. Once you get to turn 50, they just write you off as not doing anything. And those are the people I think need to be celebrated myself.
and what has that experience been like for you to get past a certain age and perhaps have to fight with the stereotypes?
Well, in my case, I don't care what you think about how old I am or not. I've lived a good life. I've given back to society. I was a teacher, a librarian for 30 odd years. So I feel like I've given my gifts, and I'm strong enough in my own beliefs and in my abilities to think that if you don't like what I'm telling you, the door's right over there. Next person. You can't let people slog you down when they try to shut you down like that. You just can't. And they will come.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Build it and they will come. I,
Hmm.
I suppose, you mentioned there about being self-published. I know that when I first began to look into publishing my writing, and there's this, overload of information about being self-published or going through a publisher or, the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do. From your standpoint, what is your advice? There's pros and cons to
Right.
both roads, but what was your experience like?
Years ago, probably 40 years ago, I tried the regular publishing route. And I was told over and over and over that my books were not of interest because they were stories about the island that I was living on, Guam. And they were those tales. And there were lots and lots, there's 3 military bases there. So there were a lot of Americans as well as the local people. And I sold close to 7,000 copies of that book. And yet publishers were saying, oh, there's not a big enough niche. We can't market that. It can't go. So and then when I did finally get to a point where somebody wanted it, I had editors who would say, oh, change this, change this, change this, that change it. I send it back to them, and then they'd say, no, you need to change this. And it was back to what I had in the first place. So I finally decided, no, forget it. So it took 40 years, but self-publishing, you are responsible for everything. If you want to hire an editor, people are going to call you on spelling errors and word errors. Then you're going to get remarks. So it needs to be pristine as you can get it. But having control over everything, including when it's coming out, if you're confident enough to do it, which is not hard, it just takes discipline to figure it out, then it's a great way to go as far as I'm concerned. And we're no longer looked at, there's so many of us doing that, we're no longer looked at as a stupid stepchild anymore. Published authors, really published authors, and self-published. Now it's getting to be more mainstream. Of course, there's a lot of real garbage out there that gets published, but you can weed through the good stuff too.
Yeah, agreed. I know that, when I first started looking into becoming an author, and like I say, there was that overwhelm of information, and it sort of seemed like just anyone could be an author. And while that's not a bad thing, what do you think that perhaps might do for the craft, quote unquote, of writing?
Well, I think it's going to dilute it a bit, but because of the people who are throwing their books out there and not having them looked at by other people and not having them professionally edited or whatever. Because you can write up a grocery list and publish it online at Amazon and sell it for $300 if you want to. But I really think the people that are good, the authors that people like that are really good, will rise to the top, and that kind of stuff will, go away after a while. It'll be there forever, but it won't be as prevalent. So I think it can help our mainstream, our group of writers, as long as we keep on doing the best we possibly can. Try to get good work out there.
Amen to that. And speaking of, self-published authors and having the good stuff rise to the top, you and I were recently part of the project The World in Our Words. That is how we met.
Oh, yes. That
And
was such a delightful surprise for me.
absolutely, I mean, t tell me about your experience with that and kind of how you came about that whole project in the first
I
place.
by no means consider myself a poet, but lately a couple of humorous poems have come into my mind. I've written them down. And I saw the invitation to be a part of the world in our own words. And I thought, well, let's see what happens. And Stephanie liked the poems and said, why not? And I went, oh my, now I'm a poet. Hoo-hoo. So it's been wonderful. And I bring the book and I put it when I do my sales, and I put it on the table, and anybody who asks for it, I tell them how to get a hold of it and everything. Um, but people are interested in it. And I thought it was wonderful. And the fact that we're all over the world and we banded together and made this production come together. And Stephanie's been amazing getting it taken care of. That's
Oh,
been wonderful.
yeah, I think it was, I've never come across a project like it.
No,
I think it will be rare if one comes up, in the
yes, I agree.
It was definitely the most collaborative thing that I've ever worked on, but I think as writers, as poets, it was such a because what I noticed, it's such a hard industry, if we'll call it that, to break into.
Yes,
I think Stephanie's willingness to just bring people on was just like what it was that confidence that you really needed. Um,
exactly.
you know, and now the
And I
kind
really, we didn't have maybe one or two with um not polite remarks. And for a whole group of people from so different cultures to get together and be that kind with each other and work together that well, that was just really amazing. Really amazing.
yeah, and I think that's the way that the creative sector should is heading. I'm seeing more of it. We're coming out of that kind of dog eats dog environment a
Yes.
little bit. I think we're sort of turning more towards now like this kind of collaborative group
Hmm.
supportive way that, the world in our words was quite honestly, I think a very good template for.
Yes.
It's lovely to hear. And I suppose we've briefly touched on them, but what would you say are some of the biggest challenges you've faced as a writer?
My biggest challenges are television, Amazon, my iPad, my coloring app, words with friends, and. I mean, procrastination. I mean, if I get up in the morning and I do what I have to do and have breakfast and come in here and start writing, I'm good. But if somebody turns that television on and it catches my eye or my computer pings or the iPad powers up, I have to fight that. I mean, I have sat there for 8 hours and played computer games, and that's ridiculous. I could have turned out a whole novel practically in that time. So that's my worst, the procrastination and the people, things that take your attention away.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. I know that, if I sit down and try to do something, it's you have to sort of beat it to the quick. Otherwise,
Yes.
I always think of inspiration as this little kind of fairy that's flying away from you, and you have to sort
Huh.
of capture it before it disappears.
Ooh, love that image. Love that. I'm going to use
Sort of like
that.
teases you a little bit, and it'll drag you one place, and then you chase after it and it's gone before
I
you
think I'm
know
going to get a picture of a fairy and suspend it from my roof, my ceiling here in the office, and have it just flying around in the air. That'll be great, and that'll grab my attention and make me go back to work. Thank you very
Yeah,
much. I
there we
appreciate
go. There we go. I
it.
can be of some help. I wish it worked, but I can't say that I've had the same luck. Um, but it's tricky. I think every creative that I've spoken to, they struggle with this procrastination, this other thing that pulls them away from it. But it sounds almost like it's human nature. It's something that as creatives, it's part of the puzzle, maybe.
I think you're right. People tend to go the easy way, and it's easier to just sit there and watch TV or play a computer game than it is to come in here and physically make myself think and write. So yeah, we tend to get lazy apparently. I mean, that's just the way people are.
I suppose that's why they call it a creative discipline, because you have to.
Yeah, excellent. Never thought of that, but you're exactly correct. You've got to be disciplined if you're going to be the difference between a published author and an unpublished author is the word someday. If you cannot fix yourself in to write it, if you just keep saying, someday I'm going to write a novel, that someday's never going to get here. So you've got to discipline yourself if that's what you want. Just like anything. If you want to be a good football player, you've got to discipline yourself to learn how to do it. Or a doctor or a lawyer, you've got to discipline yourself. It's not going to happen.
Absolutely. It's that kind of difference of if and when
Exactly.
that you have within yourself. And that's so important to have. But speaking of, the future, what's next for you? What's next on the cards?
Well, I'm wildly excited because Whoodah Thunket, the first in that series, is being made into a movie. I can't believe the lady who read the Audible book for Whoodah Thunket loved the main characters. And she said they reminded her of her mother and her aunts. And she took it to a producer and she loved it. And now they're actually making it into a movie. They've purchased the rights for me and everything's going. So I'm wildly excited about that. But other than that, like I said, I've got this serial killer novel going, and as soon as I get rid of that, um, I have a couple other novels about older people that I want to get into. You know, like the serial killer I told you, the 85-year-old one. I giggle at that thought, so I can't wait to start writing it.
A movie sounds so exciting. I mean,
Ah, they've
love.
invited me. I don't like to be in big cities and live. I prefer to be in small towns where there's not that hubbub and stuff. And they've invited me down to be a part of seeing how they do it in the background. And I really want to go, but I don't know if I will or not. We'll see. I can get brave.
Yeah, it's definitely, I've worked on kind of one or two sets and it gets busy. But I think even just to kind of watch the magic of it would be crazy. That must be such a pinch me moment though.
Oh yes. Oh, yeah. They called me on Zoom and interviewed me. And we were talking, we talked maybe for about 2 hours, but about 30 minutes into it, one of the ladies was saying something, and all of a sudden I realized you're talking about the words I wrote. And honestly, I am not a woman given to tears. And I burst out, and they thought they'd offended me. And when I finally got myself controlled enough to say anything, I just kept saying, "You're talking about my work. You're talking about my work." And it just was like, holy bat fur, this is going to happen.
I- I mean, that's amazing to hear though. I can't
Yeah.
believe I left that. I can't believe I found that out with like 5 minutes to go because I could talk about this. That's
Oh, I'm
that's
sorry.
amazing. No, no, of course. It's just I think it's so special to have someone read your work and kind of take your work to that next level and to hold it as dear as you do. I think I always find that very,
Yes,
you
that's
know,
a perfect way to put it. She's there being as loving about my work as I was. So we'll see what comes up.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm definitely gonna keep an eye out for it. I think that
Okay.
it sounds like a great book. I think it's gonna be an even better movie, which,
Thank you.
for. But thank you so much. That takes us to time now. But thank you so much for coming on. It was lovely chatting to you.
Really, I enjoyed it very much. You have a wonderful day over there, okay?
You too. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.